I'm Cindy Latham. I'm the chair and founder of the Rotary Wildfire Ready program. This is a nonprofit that's supported by our Evergreen Rotary Foundation and is affiliated with a number of our Rotary clubs here, like our Conifer Rotary, Mount Foothills, and Evergreen Rotary. We also work very, very closely with our fire departments. We have 5 different fire departments that are partners and a whole bunch of community leaders. So this has been an incredible effort, really trying to help teach people how to get prepared for wildfire. That's really our mission. That's what we're all about. But what I want to do is talk to you about our Colorado fire danger right here, right now. Oops. Where's it? There we go. So in the American West, it's the driest it's ever been in 1,200 years. The average fire season is about 3.5 months. Sorry. Okay. I don't know what that marker on here. Average fire season has increased through, 3.5 months. I don't know how to get that off the screen, that little visual. There we go. And the number of large fires has increased substantially. So a big part of this is rising temperatures that have been occurring in the West and all throughout that are making our vegetation drier. And our snowpack is melting quicker, so that makes our forest drier longer. So all this is exacerbating our situation and making the fire danger higher. So we are now living in the age of a mega fire. And a mega fire is a fire that's 100,000 acres or more. There have been so many of these fires that have been happening in the last 10 years. In the 1970s, you never saw mega fires. 30,000 acre fire was considered a big, big fire in the 70s. So what's happening is we have a lot more fuel on the ground, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that, and the situation with how dry it is, how windy it is making a situation where there are many, many more fires that we're exposed to. So if you have a 1 degree increase in temperature, there's a 4-time increase in the chance of wildfires happening. And the drought that we're experiencing right now is expected to continue through 2029. So we're in a situation where we have to be more prepared for wildfires because they're going to be coming into our area. So we have a whole bunch of troubling indicators for our state. We're in a 22-year mega drought. Again, it's the minimum. It's expected to continue is through 2029. We had the warmest year in 124 years in 2018. 2020 was the second driest and warmest year ever recorded. And then last year it was the warmest and driest on record in the state of Colorado. And the National Interagency Fire Center is reporting the prediction for 2022 is we're going to have potentially lots more fire conditions, so we all have to be prepared. So the number of wildfires has increased dramatically, and the number of acres burned has increased dramatically in Colorado. In 2002, that was the Hayman fire. 2020 is when we had 3 of the biggest fires in Colorado history. And it was East Troublesome Fire, the Cameron Peak Fire, and the Pine Gulch Fire that occurred. And then on December 31st, we had a fire that happened, in Superior and Louisville, and lost a number of homes. So the Prediction Center is always mapping 4 months out what's going to be happening with our fire risk. And you can see on this map that our Front Range area in Colorado is going to have a higher than likely wildfire risk. So that's an issue that we need to get prepared right now and do the things around your home to help protect it. One of the biggest issues facing us is how much fuel we have here. In the early 1900s, the U.S. Forest Service had a policy to stop all wildfires. Wildfires used to move naturally through our landscape every 20 years. Wildfire would move through, burn all the slash up, it would leave the big trees and had a much more open landscape, like the picture you see in 1909. Now I'm going to show you a series of pictures taken in the exact same forest, same place, so you can see over 80 years what happened. So here's 1925. Now I'm going to go to 1948. This is the same shot of the same forest. 1968, 1979, 1989. And I want you to look at these two pictures, 1909, 1989 together. We're used to seeing these densely packed forests. That's what when we moved here, kind of fell in love with. We thought this is what our forests are supposed to look like. Our forests are supposed to look like that picture in 1909, open landscape. That's a healthy forest. When you have trees that are so bunched together, excuse me, they spread diseases. There's not enough water for the trees. They dry out and die more frequently. So when you talk to foresters, they will tell you that our forests are not healthy here. But when we get this much fuel on the ground, this is the sort of thing with these unhealthy trees that create these massive wildfires and mega fires that I was talking about. So I'm going to pick on Paradise, California. This is a fire that happened in 2018. And the reason I'm going to use this is the topography is very similar to our area. Our Colorado State Forest Service folks, in talking about this, said this is actually a very good model to look at what could happen in our area because we have so many similarities that they had in Paradise. So I want to talk about that fire for a second. So what happened is this fire started, I'm sorry, I don't know what is blocking that thing. At 6:30 in the morning, a fire sparked from a power line. It was 7.5 miles from Paradise. And by 7 o'clock, that fire was 300 acres. It was a November day. There was a 40-mile-an-hour wind behind it. And that fire started moving a football field a second, unbelievably quickly. And it was dry conditions. They had a drought in that time period. By 7:30 in the morning, the firefighters were there, but the fire was moving so quickly, they had to focus on getting people out, just pure evacuation, just trying to get people out. By 8 o'clock in the morning, it was starting to get dark in Paradise. I mean, it had been a beautiful sunny day, and it was starting to get dark because of all the smoke that was coming in. And police couldn't go door to door. They had their own police force, but they couldn't go door to door because the fire was just moving so quickly. And they had no way to get people evacuated. Their code red notification system notified some of the residents, but they had all these cell phone towers started burning. So a lot of people, the cell phone towers went down, so not everyone was getting notified. So the first notification went out to residents at 8:45 in the morning, although the fire was in Paradise by 8 o'clock in the morning. By 8:30, it was reported to be completely dark. They had a hospital in Paradise, and they couldn't get on their radios to call for help because so many people were on their phones trying to find out what was going on. So they couldn't get ambulances in. So the doctors and nurses put patients in their cars and started to get on the roads. And the roads were absolutely jammed with people trying to get out. About 8:42 in the morning, I've talked about the number of residents that got the code red. There was a blizzard of embers absolutely everywhere, totally dark. Everyone's trying to get out, 9, 10 in the morning. And the temperature outside is getting so hot, it's like 1,700 degrees. And people are starting to remark about their cars when they're along the roadways, started steaming, the paint started steaming, it was getting so hot. That's the kind of situation that will happen in a fast-moving fire with a lot of fuel behind it. And unfortunately, they had a lot of houses, they had a lot of trees there, and it created this incredible conditions for a fire. By 10:45 in the morning, 20,000 acres had burned, and by noon, 90% of Paradise had burned down. That's how fast a fire can be moving through our area, and it's something that we all need to realize. Now, I'm going to show you a quick video of a woman working on getting out of her area, and I want you to think about the roads that are around you. Every tree, every piece of vegetation will burn about 4 times its height and 4 times its width in a fire. So if there are roads where the fire is right along, where the trees are right alongside the road, the fire could block the road. So it's incredibly dangerous, and that's why our fire departments, other first responders are always talking about trying to get our evacuation routes cleared, trying to do defensible space to help people get prepared. Let's see if I can get this to play. Get the speaker. Well, I'm not getting sound behind it, but she's praying and her son's in the back seat. And she has no idea if what's ahead of her.
I don't see it.
Oh, you can't see it?
No. Oh, I'm watching it.
I'm watching it. I'm totally intrigued. I'm intrigued by the whole thing.
There's too much smoke.
It looks really bad and it's scary. So, all right, I will just move on then. Okay, sorry. Oop, and now I can't even see everything's going. Okay. We have technical difficulties. While he's hooking me up, do you have any questions I can answer as I keep going through this? Yes, ma'am.
Was Paradise mitigated?
So if you read the Butte County Grand Jury investigation, they had done some mitigation in Paradise along 2 roadways in 2008 before the fire. Okay, thank you. So they had done some, but they hadn't done adequate amounts, and they kept getting cited for not doing enough roadway mitigation. People did not do defensible space in Paradise, so that was a big issue. They were not using updated building codes, so that was a big issue. So there were a whole bunch of reasons why there were a lot of failures and loss of life that happened. Okay, let's see if I can get this to play.
All right. Heavenly Father, please help us. Please help us to be safe. I'm thankful for Jeremy and his willingness to be brave.
It's about 9:30 in the morning, and you can see it was a beautiful, clear, sunny day outside of the fire zone. So during an evacuation, it can be pitch black, and you have very dangerous road conditions. And again, you can have a lot of vegetation alongside the road, which creates extreme danger for people. And unfortunately, that happened in Paradise. So the population in Paradise is 27,000. They had about 14,000 homes and buildings in Paradise. 89 people died. Most of the people that died inside their homes, or they died along the roadways. They got caught in roadways where the fire came and blocked the roads. 90% of the buildings were destroyed in 4 hours. It burned 153,000 acres, and they had $8.4 billion in insured losses there. So the thing that you hear about fires, it's also what happens after fires that are horrific. And it was an absolute war zone in that town. They had a situation where they had so many houses that burned down, 12,000 houses burned. They had toxic materials from the houses that got into the air, the soil, and the water. They had 153 miles of water pipelines that had to be torn out because benzene from homes got into the entire water supply. So the people that actually survived that fire had to ship all their water in for several years after that fire because there's no safe drinking water to drink. So the conditions that happen are extraordinary after a fire. They removed twice the amount of toxic debris that was removed from the World Trade Center after 9/11 from this little town because of the houses that burned down. So, and huge amount of their population was gone after a year, 90%. And when you hear about fires, the next thing that happens is flooding. So that's something that there are like a series of disasters after a fire that occur for people. But what it can do to our communities and people is just horrific. And there are so many parallels with our area and this Paradise area in Conifer and Evergreen. We have similar demographics, similar number of residents, similar number of population. The difference is the Paradise community had actually more evacuation routes out than our Conifer and Bailey, Conifer-Bailey, Evergreen areas had to get out. So we have a lot of pressure to get out early, and there's It's so important for us all as residents to do what we can to help make our properties defensible and harden our homes to help reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire. So the Jefferson County Wildfire Task Force, I served on that for 2 years, reports in the summary that they had that Jefferson County ranks #1 in Colorado in terms of the number of homes in high to extreme wildfire risk area. And Evergreen ranks among the highest risk area, along with Conifer. The impact of a 100,000 acre wildfire in West Jefferson County could result in the evacuation of 60,000 people, the destruction of 10,000 homes, and $5 billion in insured losses. And we are right in the target area for the state of Colorado in terms of high extreme wildfire risk. 50% of Colorado residents live in the WUI, and the WUI is a wildland-urban interface. 75% of the fires that occurred in 2020 were started by people, not naturally caused by human cause. And we have 5 times as much fuel in the ground because we've stopped all fires from happening. So we have the kind of this perfect storm of conditions. It's dry, we're not getting enough water on the ground, it's getting hotter, and we got a lot of fuel, so that creates the perfect conditions for wildfire. So our community is prepared. And we have one of these maps up in our booth that's in the auditorium. But what we decided, we wanted to overlay the couple of big 2020 fires on our area. And this is the East Troublesome Fire. And you can see Cameron, here's Conifer, Evergreen, Kittredge. So you could see if we had one of these big fires move through this area, we could all lose our communities and everything that we love about living here. This is an example of the Cameron Peak Fire if it was over our area. And each of your communities has now put out a community wildfire protection plan update. Bailey was first, then Evergreen did one in 2020. Conifer has just come out with theirs. Genesee has just done it by the same group, same modeling practices. And there's a lot of similarities between all these reports. I would highly recommend you read the report for your communities. There's going to be a lot of really important information to learn about your different evacuation routes and other things. So I'm going to pick on evergreens. And we found in our report that 80% of evergreen neighborhoods are high to extreme for wildfire risk. 100% of our neighborhoods have some of those non-survivable sections of roadways. Those are the ones where the trees are right along the roads. And if people tried to get out, the firewall could cover up and people could get caught in the roadways. And we have a lot of pinch points, and you'll see this in a lot of the reports. I don't know if you can see it very well, but the areas in yellow in the report are non-survivable roadways. The area in orange are the highly congested points for people to try to get out. And most of your community reports have these details for your neighborhood, so I recommend you look at them. And then you can mobilize community groups to start tackling them. Like I'm in the North Turkey Creek CWPIP, and we are trying to work together to help mitigate some big evacuation roadways as a community group together. So those are there are things we can do about this. I don't want to paint this as like a dire picture at all, because knowledge is power, and we can take action to do things. And it's up to us. It really is up to us to get our communities prepared. Evacuation time is really key. This was also in our Evergreen report. The evacuation time was between 25 and 200 minutes in perfect conditions. You could go the speed limit, it wasn't dark, there was no debris on the road, no accidents on the road. And from that video I showed you where it's really, really dark, where you lose visibility, this evacuation time could take a lot longer. So the kind of thing that I will tell you is that it's really important that you evacuate early. Please be paying attention if there's smoke in the air, if there are notices going out that there's a fire in our area. Do not wait for somebody to knock at your door. It's not going to happen. We need to get out early. And make sure you are signed up for our emergency notification system. It's called Code Red. It's going to be changing to Lookout Alert. If you're on Code Red right now, you're going to be switched over to this new system. There's going to be a lot of information coming out about that, but it's so critical you sign up to get notified in the emergency notification system so that you can be aware of what's going on and get your family out if there's a wildfire. So what can you do? And again, it is up to us as community members to take actions to make things happen. Our fire departments are here to support us and protect us, but the work on the ground needs to be happening by us. So you can create defensible space around your home. They've shown if you have 3 neighbors together working on defensible space, it can make a big difference in protecting homes from wildfires. So coordinating with your community members to try to get action on the ground can really make a big difference. You can harden your home against embers. And what does that mean? It's getting the pine needles out of your gutters. It's trying to put little mesh on the chimney flues so you don't get embers coming down into your houses. Most houses are lost because of embers. These are what are cast in front of fires. They can fly a mile in advance of the fires. That's one of the big reasons the fires took off in Superior, is all these embers that were flying through the air, catching under the foundations of homes and burning them up. So there's all sorts of incredible things that you could do to harden your home. Using fire-resistant landscaping, on our website, which is RotaryWildfireReady.com, all this information is there, and it has a whole bunch of tips about the type of plants that grow really well here that you can plant around your home that are fire resistant. You know, the worst plant you can have right under your foundation are junipers. And I don't know what got really popular around here, but you see that, like when I moved in 4 years ago, all sorts of junipers are right around our foundation. You see that all through our neighborhoods. Those are terrible, terrible things to have on the ground because they throw out so much resin and oil and create massive ember burns, so you want to get rid of that stuff. You sign up for the Code Red emergency system. Make an emergency evacuation go bag. On red flag days, we get a lot of those. Keep it in your garage by your car on a red flag day. Just have it in your garage ready to go and pay attention to what's in there, because you may need to get out and you may need to be somewhere where you need supplies for a couple of days. So that's what's going into your emergency go bag. And make sure you know your escape routes. Go practice them. Go drive around. Try to understand your ways out. You know, sometimes the worst way out is, one that you're going up a hill or you're going into a narrow valley. I live near North Turkey Creek, and North Turkey Creek frightens me every time I drive near it because it's like this valley. And if a fire happened there, you could get terribly caught in the trees right along the road. So you really want to pay attention to your evacuation routes. And get your neighbors involved. You know, the problem is not enough people know about this. And it's so important because that's the number one risk to us in our communities for our lives and safety is wildfire. And so we need to work together and build community groups that are really helping mobilize efforts that can happen. A community group in Evergreen worked together through 6 different community organizations to get a grant to do 14.5 miles of evacuation roadside mitigation. And they got a grant that's covering all of that. But that happened from community leaders working on putting their grant together and then partnering with our fire department to help oversee the grant. So there are all sorts of things that we can do to start making a difference, but we have a lot to catch up on, a lot of work to do, and each and everything you can do makes a big difference. We have a booth that's in the auditorium where you can get a lot of materials on this, people that can answer your questions if you have any more questions about it. This website is a great, great resource. It's, again, RotaryWildfireReady.com, has all the information about, all the official numbers you should monitor in case of a fire. If you guys smell smoke, you want to know where a fire is, we have website resources where you can look up where smoke is coming from. It's all in here, and all the phone numbers for our fire departments, their Twitter feeds, their Facebook feeds, because you need to monitor important official information, and we've got all the numbers listed for all of that in this website, and a lot more. And then we also are posting a lot on our Facebook page, which is at Rotary Wildfire Ready. So if you just want to keep in the know, that's a good way to do it too. So anyway, I just want to see if you have any questions, anything I can answer. It's a lot of information to throw at you, but it's important. Yes, ma'am.
So in Paradise, those cell phone towers went out. You know where all our cell phone towers are.
Yeah.
So is there anything else, like emergency radio systems or?
Yes. So the question was, in Paradise, a lot of the cell phone towers went out, which affected some of their communications as they were burning down. And we have the same. We have cell phone towers a lot around here too. In talking to the Office of Emergency Management, which reports to the Jeffco Sheriff, we've talked to Hal Grebe, who's the director there, about that kind of thing, about how can we get notifications out as a support system. They have something called the Wireless Emergency Alert System, which is what we know as the Amber Alert System. The WEA system just got used in Boulder at the NCAR fire, where we sent out these WEA alerts to everybody a quarter of the mile around where that fire was, because you had a lot of hikers out on the road. So there are backup systems that they're thinking about, and Jefferson County is aware of that, and our emergency management is aware of this particular issue, especially since our cell phone towers have a similar situation here, and they're preparing kind of backup systems to be able to notify us. Okay? Yes, sir.
How does that get sent out when it's not cell phone?
How does the alerts?
The WEA, it's not cell phone based. How does that work?
Why, I don't know. Do you, Scott? Do you know that?
Like the Amber.
It's the Amber Alert, but it's on your cell phone. That works.
But if your cell phone tower's down, you don't get that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I don't think you need cell coverage to get.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I don't know for sure, but I thought that like an Amber Alert goes out even if you don't. As long as you have phone power, it somehow gets to you, even though if you don't have cell phone towers around. So it's a different communication broadcast system. And yes, Scott, yeah.
I believe that system is based on any cell tower, regardless of service, Verizon, AT&T, whatever you have, that system is going to use any one of those available. So if the Verizon tower gets burned over,
Okay.
there are probably other towers around. So my Verizon, my local Verizon tower gets burned over, I don't have cell service, but there may be an AT&T tower that may.
But it's still cell-based.
Correct. Everything gets burned.
Yeah, okay. I don't know, could you all hear that? Okay, so on the cell phone towers, if you have cell service and you're on Verizon or AT&T and your tower burns down, you may not get cell service. If they use the WEA system, it will port over to whatever tower is available and still get to your phone. There is a possibility every single cell phone tower could burn down, and then you wouldn't get a notice. Yes, that's possible, but and hopefully that never ever happens. But the key is to be aware of what's going on in your area, and if you see fire, if you see smoke and see fire, go. Don't wait for somebody to notify you. Go down the hill. Go to a restaurant. Get out. But we just want to get people ready. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Contacting to control burn on our property.
So you need to work, so the question was, who do you contact to get a controlled burn? Yeah, I think your fire departments have burn permits and the county has that kind of thing. You need to coordinate with your fire department, whatever your local fire department is, to do it.
Where you are, I believe burn permits are put out by Platte Canyon. Elk Creek does not.
Okay.
That's up to the sheriff's department.
Okay.
So it depends which area you're actually on. I'm not sure.
It depends county to county where the burn permits are. So it sounds like Park County, Platte Canyon,
Platte Canyon,
they will
actually
issue a burn permit,
Yeah,
but Elk Creek does not. What about Evergreen? Does it issue burn permits now, or Jeffco?
It's based on county, but the permit comes from the state, so it's a state permit and it's issued from the county.
So Jefferson County also, you have to go through the county to get it. Okay. Yeah, and I think that Evergreen's got on their website where to get the burn permit information. So does that help a little bit? Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So, what I saw from California was the addition to all this fuel, the town of Paradise didn't have quite enough infrastructure to get alerts out on time and get people hospitalized. And it's striking because this town has a state government, whereas Conifer and Evergreen do not. So, what do you think we can change in our town's infrastructure to make such a catastrophe less likely?
I don't know if you can hear him. It was a great question. So he's talking about in Paradise there was some infrastructure issues with their cell towers. They did have their own police force. They had their own 911 center. They had more kind of evacuation routes. So what can we do in our area to make sure that we have proper infrastructure and support to manage and handle a catastrophic wildfire that came through here? Does that kind of summarize? Or
Yep,
is that okay? Okay. Not as well as you did. So anyway, boy. The key piece for all of us is to do what we can around our homes and what we can in our neighborhoods to really focus on our evacuation routes and try to help get mitigation done alongside the roadways so that we can get out. That's key. And we have to make sure that we are paying attention to the smoke that's in the air and if there are any fires, so that we have to become our own advocates for getting out, because we don't have a police force. We rely on our sheriff departments for support because we're unincorporated areas. So we need to partner as much as we can with the county and our fire departments on the support they need.
Feeling hungry out there?
Sorry.
Sliced Devil Dogs and Shaved Ice is right outside the front doors behind Evergreen Mountain Sports booth in the auditorium. Be sure to check out our artisans too.
Okay, so we need to partner with our counties about the needs we have.
That's Sliced Devil Dogs and Shaved Ice right outside the doors behind Evergreen Mountain Sports booth. Enjoy.
Okay. So as a non-incorporated areas, we have to partner with our counties. We need to support our fire departments every way we can, because they are, the folks in our fire departments are doing a lot of heavy lifting. We can't make them do everything at all. It really is about partnering and collaborating as much as possible so that we can all get out. I wish I could give you a more direct answer. There's so many lessons learned from that Paradise fire, and we are not well prepared in this area for a big catastrophic fire. So we need to do more, lots more. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question just to add on to Amy's too. I just purchased a home up here, and I was a little bit concerned after I bought the home that there's apparently some kind of bike ramps going up in Shadow Mountain. And when you talk about trying to evacuate, I've heard about maybe 700 people might be coming up here. So I just wonder, how is that handled with the fire department? You want to help them, but at the same time, if this happens, how do I get out?
Yeah, so one of the things on our evacuation planning is the number of visitors we get to our areas and to a lot of our parks and other things that are here, and what's being factored in for all these extra visitors on evacuation. Evacuation is the responsibility of the sheriff's department. It's really not the fire department. The fire department's there to fight the fires. That's not their job to evacuate people, although they get involved in that sometimes too. So the Office of Emergency Management, they try to do planning around that and try to think about what could happen, but it's a significant issue. And the thing, as a new resident, I moved here 4 years ago. I drove around. I tried to figure out, okay, how can I get out? If you coordinate in neighborhoods, because sometimes neighborhoods are kind of isolated between this HOA and that other subdivision, they don't talk. There are these neighborhood ambassador groups that coordinate between communities. Like in our neighborhood, we have a back gate, and if we opened our back gate during a wildfire, it could save 20 minutes on our adjacent neighborhood's evacuation. 20 minutes. So we're working with them now to make sure that we are doing the things that we can to help protect them as well. And so that's where it takes neighbors to neighbors talking about this stuff and looking at some people that have another way out that you might need. And we all need to have a lot of conversations about that. Yes, sir.
So let's say you can't get out because 73 and 74 are jammed up. Are there any sanctuary areas, such as Conifer High School or Evergreen Lake, something like that? Is anything designated like that?
Boy, so in the Evergreen 2020 CWPIP, it has something called shelter-in-place locations that are identified as absolutely the last place you want to go if there's an emergency, and it's one that would be as horrifically unpleasant to be able to operate through. So one example is the sports field in Marshdale. That's one of those shelter-in-place locations. I don't know about Conifer High. It might be one of those locations. I don't know enough about the Conifer spot. But if you look at the Evergreen CWPIP, there are only a few of those areas identified. And what you have to look at is that there's massive amounts of fuel and heat coming. You need to make sure you're in an area where there's nothing combustible. So that's like a pavement of a road, something where there's nothing that can burn a great distance around you, so that the flames can't come in. Anyway, and in Paradise, there are reports and all sorts of documentaries about people that got caught in jammed up in roadways, and the police department actually got them out of their cars and had them go face down on some asphalt that was away from some of the trees, and they made it, but it was just, it's as scary a thing to listen to that documentary as possible. But they really don't advise us to have shelter-in-place locations. Is that right, Scott? Am I getting that accurate?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into preparing your shelter-in-place location. You may have heard the term safety zone before. Safety zone is something where you can be 100% safe.
Hello out there. Are you feeling hungry? Sliced deviled dog
Come
and
here and speak
shaved
into the
ice
mic.
is right outside
Scott's
the door.
with the Evergreen
behind
Fire
the
Rescue, so I'm
Evergreen
really
Mountain
picking on
Sports
him
booth
for
in
this.
the
It's a
auditorium.
really important
Be
question.
sure to check out our art stations too.
Yeah, so the idea of shelter-in-place locations, it's another term for it is a temporary area of refuge. And one thing that has to be done to those locations is they have to be prepared before people can be safe there. And so there are a lot of things that would have to be done. Say, for example, in Evergreen, one of those locations is Elk Meadow. And as you guys know, the grass grows 3 feet, 4 feet high there sometimes. That is definitely not a safe place to be in a fire unless that area was burned out. And then that's a different story. But who's going to do that? Who's going to take the responsibility of doing that and taking on that responsibility of putting fire on the ground to prepare that location? And do those people have time to do that? And so that it's a huge thing to be able to make a temporary area of refuge ready. And so it's a long process. Hopefully in the future we'll address that. But right now it's a hard thing to point to a place and say, hey, you're good to go there. So I hope that helps with that a lot. So if you see this location on a map as this is a temporary area of refuge, kind of think in your mind, it's not yet ready. So one location could be here, so the field's here. That could be one of those locations. You don't have to do much prep to make that football field or soccer field or baseball field ready. But then again, how many people can those places hold? Relatively not that many compared to our population. And so ingress, egress into those locations, who determines who goes there or who doesn't go there, it's a huge issue that we're trying to tackle. So, does that help?
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
So, do you have an option for us to actually light our properties on fire and make a burn and just burn our properties?
So what years?
Why don't you ask her?
The question was, is there an option to what we call prescribed fire, put prescribed fire on the ground and burn out an area? Was your question more towards just general fire mitigation, or in the event of a fire, or your property?
Like, however you burn, I want you to burn my property.
Okay.
Prepare it so
Very good question.
comes through, all the stuff that we burn is being burned.
Okay, perfect.
Control the fire.
Great question. So, for mitigation, there are techniques that we use, like we call them prescribed fire or an RX burn, and in that group is pile burning. So piling slash and burning it when there's snow on the ground. Currently, we do not have that capacity as a fire department to do that for people. But one thing you guys have that is very useful is in the wintertime when there's snow on the ground. Well, you make piles of slash in the summer, and then when the snow is on the ground, after you've gotten your permit through your respective department or county, then you can burn those piles in the winter when there is snow on the ground, and it's safe conditions to do it. No low wind or no wind. That is a really good way to address that. But to your question, to answer it directly, we do not put fire on the ground in that regard. So. It's a very good question. There used to be a very, very strong prescribed fire program in Colorado, and then there was a fire called the Lower North Fork Fire that was an escaped prescribed fire, and that killed several people. And so since then, there's been a really some big hesitancy to put fire back on the ground, rightfully so. So there is movement to get back into that, and I think this past year in the in the area in which the Lower North Fork Fire happened, it was the first prescribed fire that was put back on the ground. It was successful, and so I hope that we are going to move back into that. But again, there's strong hesitancy towards that. So.
And part of the CWP plans in all of our areas has a series of actions that are recommended, and some of them are to create strategic fuel breaks, big fuel breaks, to help slow a big fire down. So again, please read your CWPP for your local community. You'll learn a ton. There are details on your neighborhoods in those plans, and it's well worth knowing about and reading. Any other questions? That was heavy. It's a lot of tough stuff, but the thing is we can do something about it. And that's really the message here of we want to do what we can to protect our communities. We love our communities. We need to get more involved, and that's we as residents need to get more involved to help make this happen. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.